Watch the video version of this podcast at outlatewithdavid.com.
Hi, I'm David Cotton. I'm a father, a brother, a son. I'm a retired U.S. Air Force Brigadier General, a former senior executive in the Department of Defense, a corporate vice president, and now a life coach. At the age of 59, I told my wife, my kids, and the world, I'm gay. Join me as I talk with others who've made this coming out journey late in life to become who they really are.
You're listening to Outlate with David.
My guest today is a successful real estate broker who came out at age 49 after 26 years of marriage. While he always knew he was attracted to men, he loved his wife and all that marriage provided. But now divorced, he's openly gay and hosts a podcast for men coming out later in life. Joining me from his home in Los Angeles is Brian James. Welcome, Brian.
Thank you so much for having me, David.
It's a pleasure. Congratulations on the new podcast, Coming Inside Out. I want to talk to you about that, but first, I want to get into your story. As I understand, you came out, 2019 after 26 years of marriage? You love being married. What was it you liked so much about married life?
I loved the relationship that I had with my wife. I loved the connection. I loved everything about it. I think that I'm a family-oriented man that was trapped in a gay body. So I miss it. My heart misses my old life. I was well adapted to being a married man and having kids. But deep down inside, I had a sexual desire that didn't match up with my wife.
How did you resolve that then when you met her, I assume fell in love and started that relationship?
Yeah. My wife and I met in school. So we actually met in 6th grade, but we didn't become friends until junior high school. And we didn't start dating until we were 20. So we had a long connection with each other. And we just had, an amazing friendship. And that friendship evolved into a sexual relationship.
So what brought you to not being close together when you eventually divorced?
My wife is a much healthier person than I am. Spiritually, emotionally, she's just a more grounded person. She'd have this demon in the back of her head screaming at her all the time that you're gay. Obviously, I had that. So she was on a healthier path than I was. She'd given me years and years and years of opportunities to read self-help books, go to therapy, get coaching, all of this stuff to make myself a better person. And she was 100% in on that. And I was maybe 20% in on that. So there just came a point in our relationship where she was on a much, just a different path than I was. And she was tired of my shit. So she basically told me, I love you. I'm no longer in love with you. I want a divorce.
So you were aware that you're gay during this whole time frame when she was encouraging you to see therapy and coaching?
Yes. Yeah, I knew I was gay as a child.
So knowing that as a child and entering to life, how did you push it back, or why didn't you embrace that gay part and just go out in the world and be an out gay man?
I didn't know how. But this is all going back to the 1980s when I was in high school, knowing my sexual desires and fantasies that I was having at the time. I didn't know a single gay person. My parents didn't really talk about sexuality, and I thought it was taboo. I was not brought up in a religious home. I thought this was something that I was going to outgrow. Thought, okay, at some point in time, these feelings are going to go away. My wife and I are going to start dating, and they're going to go away. We're going to get married, and they're going to go away. Kids, and they're going to go away. And that demon chased me my entire life. I spent a lot of time in therapy. always having an excuse of what was going on, when deep down inside what was going on is I was, trying to snuff out my sexual orientation, not my orientation, but just who I was as a person.
Did you expose that to the therapist of what your real issues were, or were you aware?
No. Oh, I knew 100% what my issues were. No, it was a secret that I was going to take to my grave.
Why is that?
Because I was so invested. I put so much of my life into being this heterosexual partner and husband that I was all in, and I was not going to alter from what I had set out.
Did you have kids in the relationship?
I do. I have two boys. I have a 21-year-old and an 18-year-old.
Had you explored any of your sexuality while you were still married? Gone out and
Never
experimented with a man?
No.
Nothing.
I never had an experience with another man until I was 50 years old, after my divorce. After my separation, before my divorce.
Since you kept this inside, hadn't experimented,
Yes.
knew what you thought, were you afraid what other people would think of you, or how society would act, or your friends, family, workmates?
I would have never done it. It would have ended my marriage to my wife, and I would have never come out. It wasn't in the cards. I wasn't going to cheat. I wasn't online. I wasn't, seeking anything out. I was really walking through life with blinders on. So it wasn't an option. So I didn't even think about telling another person, because it would have ended my marriage.
It sounds like that the divorce or the separation was taking the blinders off that allowed you then to acknowledge to yourself who you really are.
Early on, when I thought, okay, at some point in time, I'm going to heal from this and I'm going to want to start dating again. And I actually thought I was going to date a woman. I wasn't going to date a man. I was going to.
Why would you date a woman?
I was going to keep my secret buried. I was not going to come out. I had no intentions of coming out. I had designed my life as a heterosexual man, even though I wasn't.
What were you fearing that you would give up? And I'm judging that you'd fear something. Fearing that you'd give up if you came out as a non-heterosexual man, even after you're separated and going on a new path.
I was so conditioned to who I was that when the opportunity presented itself, it wasn't an option. I was walking my dog during COVID. I was walking my dog during COVID, and I said to myself, I'm like, okay, Brian, you are going to be honest with yourself right now. You're going to be honest with yourself. Would you want to date another woman, or would you want to date a man? And I said to myself on that walk, I would want to date a man. I wouldn't want to date a woman. And in that very moment, I made the decision, okay, Brian, you just revealed what your desire is. And I made the decision on that walk, okay, so I'm going to be gay. And that was what I had wanted my entire life. And I reached out to a therapist that I had during the course of my divorce. I'm like, listen, I need to tell you something. And I told her I was gay and that I wanted to set up a plan to come out.
You were considering dating women, but something happened. What was that something that happened that had you shift? And how did that feel in your body and mind when that shift occurred?
When that thought occurred to me, I was like, oh my God, this is what's been missing from your life, Brian. You have not been, I feel like I worked so hard for everything that I've ever accomplished. And I was always felt like I was butting up against something. I was like, why is it so hard? Why is it so hard? And I thought, okay, this is it. Now I'm going to be in the flow of life. Oh my God, my life is just going to just flow, because for the first time in my life, I'm being true to myself. Being my authentic Brian. And it allowed me to start journaling. It put me on a path of discovery for myself, which was amazing. But I was naive because I thought in that very moment, I'm making a decision, and all of a sudden, all of this pain and heartache and struggle and suffering and darkness that occurred in my life was just going to vanish. And I'm going to announce to the world that I'm gay, and I'm just going to be the most happy, light, joyful, fun person. That hasn't happened yet.
You're listening to Out Late with David.
One of my favorite songs is called Older, sung by Ben Platt. The song was comforting to me in my journey of self-discovery and acceptance. The line in the refrain, "Don't let your wonder turn into closure," can be especially powerful for someone coming out as gay. It suggests the curiosity and openness we have about who we are should never be shut down by fear or settling for what feels easier. Coming out is often about embracing the unknown, wondering what life could look like if we live authentically. This line is a reminder to stay curious, to keep exploring, and not close yourself off from the possibilities of your true self, even if it's hard or uncomfortable. It encourages people not to put a lid on their identity out of fear, but instead to keep moving towards self-discovery and fulfillment. So take the advice of the song and don't let your wonder turn into closure.
I can understand the power of change, having been through that myself, where I was in a hotel room on a business trip in Orlando and looked in the mirror and realized, David Cotton, you're a gay man. It's similar to walking your dog, where it's like it just hit me out of the blue, where I'd had all this depression and stress and didn't know really what the root of it was, but knew there was something inside of me. And I know when I said it for myself, that just released that tension. Yes, it brought others in a different way, as you probably acknowledge and be aware of as well. But it was the beginning for me, I know, for my road to transformation, just by that self-acceptance, which is the first step. Talking to a lot of guys that have been through this, that's kind of the first major step, like walking the dog and saying, oh yeah, there's something I need to do here, and shift a bit if I want to go forward in a more long-term joyful way. It may not be immediate joyful, but we see the potential for joyful, and it doesn't dishonor the past and disregard what took place, because we still loved and cared and grew and nurtured the people in our lives. And we made decisions about ourselves for their benefit, not necessarily our benefit, for their benefit, by keeping things suppressed and closeted inside.
Yes.
So
my life wasn't a lie. My life wasn't a lie. Now, my ex had asked me that. She's like, was this whole thing a lie? And I'm like, absolutely not. I love my wife. And if someone said to me today, Brian, if you could go back and do this all over again, would you do it differently? And I said, I wouldn't. I have my kids. I have my children. There's not any part of me that would go back and change. I became a much better person. I became a more grounded person. I became a very humbled person. I 100% believe I became a much better father to my children at that time. It took so much stress off of me. I was so anxious walking around with that secret for so long. And when I made the decision that I was going to come out, and I told my therapist, it probably was less than 2 months. It may have been 6 weeks between the time I told her I was going to do it and the time I confessed who I was, and when I actually came out was a very short period of time.
Did you go back to your wife? You're separated from your wife, I assume, at this time.
Yes.
Did you come out to her, and how did she react to all that?
I met her at Starbucks. I got into her car, and I said, listen, I have something I need to share with you, because after I talk to you about this, I'm going to go home and I'm going to tell our kids. So I said, listen, what I need to tell you, I'm just going to come right out and say it. At some point in time, I'm going to start dating again. And when I start dating again, I'm going to date a man. I'm not going to date a woman. And I'm going to go home and I'm going to share it with our children. And in the moment, she took it really well. She said she was shocked. She was not I don't know what she thought I was wanting to talk to her about, but she's like, oh my God, I never thought this is what you wanted to talk to me about. But had I never come out, and a year later, my wife said to me, I made a mistake, would you be interested in getting back together? I would have gotten back together with her. I would have happily never come out of the closet and gotten back together with her. But my coming out, she's too healthy for that, and I wouldn't want that for myself. Anyways, so I wrote her a letter of love, and I think she appreciated it because it was one of the first times in our marriage where I showed my true vulnerability to her that I had not really shown. I showed a lot of irritation, frustration in our relationship. I didn't show a lot of emotional intelligence.
Was that frustration and irritation that you showed her, do you think in retrospect it was linked and tied to you hiding and suppressing your sexuality?
100%. I lived in fear. I lived in fear that I was going to be found out. That someone was going to know I was gay. That someone, people have gaydar. I was like, if I ever met a gay person and we were at a party, in our 30s or 40s, I was always worried, this person has gaydar and they're going to, find me out. No. Expose me. So, yes, it was that. And sexually, I had fantasies about wanting to be with a man. So it was just the suppression.
So when you went back home after the Starbucks conversation and talked to the kids,
Yes.
How did they react to Dad?
So my kids at the time were probably 16 and 14. I pretty much told, I just met your mom at Starbucks. I told her something that I'm going to share with you. And I had them sit across from me on the couch. And I told them, I said, listen, when I decide to get into another relationship or start dating, I'm going to date a man, not a woman. And my older son at the time, 16, said, welcome to the club. And I said,
Welcome to the club?
I said, does that mean that you're gay? Are you telling me that you're gay? And he said, yes. So he came out to me in the same conversation that I came out to him.
Fantastic.
So,
Like the power of vulnerability. Parents show they're vulnerable,
yes.
or show yourself that you're vulnerable to somebody else, and it's amazing what can take place.
Yes.
It's usually beautiful. So now you've told her, your ex-wife, you've told the kids.
Yes.
So now
Yes.
you are in a new world. So what's it been like exploring that new world?
So this all happened during COVID. This all was in July of 2020. I sat with that for about a week, and then I told pretty much, if you knew me and I wanted you to know me over a 3-day period, I told everybody. I told my coworkers, I told my family, I told my friends. Golf, I told my golf buddies. I came out to everybody. So I did it 100%. In the beginning, because my son had just come out to me at the same time, I went online, I bought us, pride stuff, rainbow shirts and socks and all kinds of stuff. And he wasn't interested in it. And I felt like for the first time in my life, I wanted to advertise who I was. Here I'm a 50 at the time. So this is July. I had already turned 51. I'm a 51-year-old man. Nobody's ever known that I was gay my entire life. I want people to know that I'm gay. So I had a period of time. I didn't have a slutty face, which a lot of guys have. So I think I just had more of I was liberating myself, and I was like, here I am, world. I'm a proud gay man. So since that day, I have never been ashamed of my sexuality, of who I am. If someone was to ask me, I'm proud to be me.
It didn't have that gay adolescence where you went out there and
No,
party. And
no, it happened during COVID, part of it. And then part of it was, it just wasn't it was not my scene.
that's your jam,
Who I was as a person.
Okay. Are there any things that you did along the way that you regret that you do differently today?
And coming out?
in this whole process of self-discovery and coming out? And
I would have treated myself better.
and what would that look like to treat yourself better?
I just would have been kinder to myself. I have not been kind to myself in this process. I've been pretty hard on myself. I've always been hard on myself because I've set a standard for myself. So I feel like I have abused myself, more emotionally than anything else. But definitely, I've probably been more depressed since I came out than I've been my entire life. So,
What do you think is the root of that?
I think I'm lonely. I think it's loneliness. I think, 30 years with my wife, we have verbal communication, but our bodies also vibrate off of each other. And living with her, my body's talking to her even when we're not speaking. And when we separated, that vibration was severed. I feel like my body was still sending out a vibration and getting nothing in return. And it just made my soul feel really lonely. And for the first time, because I didn't have, I had never experienced that form of loneliness before. So to experience that was pretty heavy and new for me.
As a life coach, I'm committed to help you discover the passions in your life and help you map a course to achieve the things you really want. Together, we will unwind those persistent self-doubts that are holding you back. You'll begin to see your passions more clearly and set achievable goals. Throughout your journey, I'll be there to challenge and encourage you in moving forward to discover your authentic self. For more information about my personal life coaching services, or to arrange a complimentary consultation, visit davidcottoncoaching.com.
You're listening to Outlate with David.
So where do you see yourself in the future, like jump 5 years ahead? Where would you like to be, in your life? And
I would like to be happier than I am today. I'd like to be more fulfilled than I am today. I understand that all of that comes from within, and it's not something that I'm going to happen to me on the exterior. I just haven't, I don't know. I haven't really gotten over, I thought I was going to die being married to my wife. And so to be, in this townhouse and not have wake up to my kids every day and just, have 50% of my life being alone. It's difficult. The loneliness or the silence is screaming at times. That's how it feels.
I would guess I would, from what I've heard and learned in our time together, short time, is that you have taken charge of responsibility for your life. You've acknowledged who you are on your walk with your dog. You took action. You embraced it. It brought you joy of being able to be open and honest about yourself. And you have tremendous opportunity based on this without the stress of keeping everything suppressed. So my ask of you would be, don't forget to acknowledge yourself for all that you've been through and the strength and the courage that you demonstrated. Do you regret coming out at all?
I don't. At 100%, I do not. If I had a regret, it would have been after my divorce, if I had actually pursued a relationship with a woman. That would have been a regret.
Okay.
I don't have a regret in coming out. I love being an out gay man. I absolutely love it.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
It's that first step of going forward. You know what you want.
Yes.
And so that's good. That's the stones are stable as you walk down the path. So that's fantastic. So now let's talk about your podcast, Coming Inside Out, that you co-host with a fellow friend.
Yes.
Tell us about the show and maybe a bit about him, is how you guys came together and how that all is working.
I had posted some things about my coming out. I posted the very first time. I spoke the words out loud, I'm gay. And someone reached out to me like, hey, listen, I've been reading all these things that you've been posting. I host a podcast. I'd love to have you as a guest on my podcast. And I was like, oh my God, I'd be honored. So I did this podcast back in 2021, and I had so many amazing people reach out to me and just give me so much love. They had been through the same struggle, or they were struggling with it. And then I went to dinner with my gay fathers group. There were 8 of us, and we're sitting around this table in a restaurant. We're all just talking and sharing. And these are all men that were married. They have kids. They're all divorced and come out as gay. And John, who's, big personality, he's like, oh my God, guys, this should be a podcast. Maybe that's what I should do. So I kind of put together a very loose outline, and I asked John if he wanted to go to lunch, and we met for lunch. I'm like, hey, listen, you brought this up. These are all these things that have been happening to me over the last couple of years, and I would like to do a podcast. Would you be interested in doing a podcast with me? And he was like, absolutely. So we know nothing about podcasting. I never even really listened to podcasts before, other than the one I was on. I went out, I bought some equipment, I watched some YouTube videos, we got our camera, got the equipment, hit the record button, and it's been very raw. The men that have reached out to us, that have written to us through this podcast, it breaks my heart, because there's so much.
There's a lot out there that feel alone, that's why I do this podcast as well, to reach out and help those that are afraid, in the dark, don't know where to go. They think that they're one of a kind. They're not. We're all out here. So
I know.
So
yes.
So I would say thank you for doing that and having the courage to do that. And it sounds like the universe was speaking to you as it did to me. And that's why we're in this space today.
Yeah. And, I'm not doing it for myself. I actually think this is part of the bittersweet. If I lived the life that I lived, learned the lessons that I learned to become the person I am today, it happened for a reason. Like I said, it didn't happen to me. It happened through me. And if any good's going to come out of it, this podcast or me sharing this is the good that's coming out of this.
So based on what you've been through then, kind of the final question here.
All right.
Brian, what advice might you have to other married men who are struggling with the decision to accept who they are and come out to their spouse?
That is such a loaded question, David, only because, what works for me is not what's going to work for somebody else. Nobody could have ever talked me out of the closet when I was in the closet. And even though I feel like I was I'm not the person I was 5 years ago. And I was so suppressed. I didn't share, emotionally disconnected from myself. To be the person I am today, it's like, this is the joy that's on the other side. I was this stagnant person for my entire life that my kids didn't really enjoy, my wife didn't enjoy. To be the person I am today, it's like light and day. I was in the closet, and now I'm hosting a podcast about being gay, and my life could not be any different. So anybody who's struggling, that may be thinking that there's nothing for them on the other side, what I would say to them is, I thought that also, and I've created this amazing, rich life on the other side as an out, gay, proud father man that I would have never been able to experience before. The friendships I have today are so much richer than friendships I ever had in my past. I'm able to be 100% me. I'm completely vulnerable and completely transparent. So that's what this has given to me. It's given me life.
Well, thank you, Brian, and thank you for being vulnerable and sharing your story. And as I think we've said a couple of times, the power of vulnerability. By being vulnerable, we help someone else, such as you during your show and this show. We know that there's someone out there that will hear today's discussion, and they'll be fortified to take whatever step they feel is necessary in their life. So thank you for your time today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Brian fully admits that his anger and frustration during his marriage was tied to the fact he was hiding his authentic self. He wasn't being the man he wanted to be, and his relationship suffered for it. For Brian, marriage and family was the dream, and holding on to the life he loved so much took priority over his need to be himself. Our desire to live a life that is acceptable to others is powerful, and in some cases can overwhelm the need to be who we are. Brian's one regret is that he was too hard on himself, and I agree. Most of us coming out later in life share similar regrets, but like Brian, we need to forgive ourselves and finally allow others to love the man we have become. I'm David Cotton. Thanks for listening. Join me next time on Outlate with David.
To hear more episodes, visit outlatewithdavid.com. And to learn more about personal life coaching services, go to davidcottoncoaching.com.